Eddie Howe has been on the watch list of West Ham chairman David Sullivan for quite some time. I can remember as far back as Howe being in charge of Bournemouth when West Ham's major shareholder would talk about Eddie Howe. He would always praise him. He sort of rated him highly, but I remember during his time at Bournemouth, he said, not now, this is too early. I want to see what he can do. It was almost as if he was being cautious that Howe might just be a flash in the pan. He wanted to see a little bit more. Of course, ultimately, Eddie Howe left, and he didn't leave Bournemouth under the best of circumstances, but he'd done a pretty damn fine job there. The next time I heard people within West Ham talk about Eddie Howe was when he went off to do, what should we say, top up his experience. Not quite an apprenticeship. He went across Europe to go and study what people were doing in the continental game. So Eddie Howe went and visited La Liga, Serie A, and the Bundesliga and the Eredivisie. And what he would do is he would go and perhaps go and visit Barcelona, and he would take in their coaching sessions. He would go and look at how some of the Bundesliga giants would do it, not just in terms of coaching, but in terms of how the club was run. He was topping up his education. He was learning, which is a really, really good thing to do. He's not on his own. There are a lot of coaches that go and do this, but it was good for him, I think, to look at his failings at Bournemouth, go and top up his education and come back with some fresh ideas. Of course, he got the Newcastle job, and he was far from the first choice, but he got the job. And I think he did absolutely tremendously well. Now, I'm only bringing this to your attention now because rumours are starting to circulate. Well, not only that Eddie Howe is going to lose his job at Newcastle. Now, I heard that even before the loss to Nottingham Forest. I heard that irrespective of what happened against Nottingham Forest, that Howe was going to lose his job, that Newcastle had lined someone up as a replacement in January. Now, the links are easy to make, but you've had a manager who, I mean, despite us doing well in the Premier League, I mean, because of coming off the back of the 5-0 loss against Fulham and then a sort of drubbing against Liverpool, David Moyes is under pressure. Look, David Moyes is always under pressure, let's just put it that way. Even if he wins a trophy, David Moyes is under pressure. So it gets suggested that maybe, just maybe, should Eddie Howe become available, maybe West Ham would be interested in him. And here's where it gets interesting, because had you have asked me a couple of months ago, would I swap David Moyes for Eddie Howe? I'd have said yes, absolutely, yeah, let's do it. In fact, I probably would have done so, though, because I would have thought there's no way you would get Eddie Howe out of Newcastle, because his stock was so high. I mean, he looked at the very start. Well, first of all, he's got them into the top 4. I'm not saying he hasn't spent any money, but he's not spent the sort of money that those clubs normally take to get them into the top 4. He maybe did a similar job to what Aston Villa are doing this season. So it was impressive. I also think he'd been denied latterly this season. His star signing was Tonielli. Tonielli's got banned. He's been without what the composition of what his main midfield would be. So if you asked me a couple of months ago, I would have said yes. We had a progressive manager who played attacking football. I love fast football. I love attacking football. I really do. And he's going to be an exponent of that. Don't get me wrong. He knows how to defend and he can go and shut up shop. But in the main, this was somebody I was looking at his qualities, particularly the pace of the team, the fact that he's not afraid to promote youngsters. And I think certainly the fact that he can make players better. There was a lot of reasons to like Eddie Howe. And I'm looking at it now, and I have to say I'm not so sure. Now, I get accused of flip-flopping a lot on this channel. And I don't care, is the truth of the matter. And because I don't see it as a bad quality, particularly in sport. Don't get me wrong. In everyday life, you need to have a sort of single-mindedness. In sport, I'm all over the place. Honestly, I can change my opinion on, from watching Formula 1, I can change my opinion. Actually, that's a bad example because it's quite processional, isn't it? It's just Max Verstappen doing that all the time. But I can watch a sporting event and change my mind on numerous occasions. Watching the boxing the other night, I found myself changing my opinion sort of throughout. And I do it in football quite a lot. And I look at it now, and it's changed pretty damn quickly for West Ham, particularly after the Liverpool result. And I look at maybe what David Moyes is doing right now, and I think actually it would be pretty disruptive for West Ham this season to change managers right in the middle of the season. So without getting to the end of the video and just saying, I'll just tell you now, I think if I was offered Eddie Howe to change hands and take over West Ham right now, I think I'd say no. I really do. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot to admire about Eddie Howe. I loved what he did with Almiron there. The way he sort of repositioned Joe Linton, I thought was really good. Was people like Jacob Murphy, who was a sort of every inch really on his way. I know he's a younger player, but he's a twin, I think. He came from Norwich. Him and his twin both played there. The Murphy twins. And he looked like he was destined to be a journeyman footballer. Howe made him look better. He made a lot of the players look an awful lot better at Newcastle, as well as buying pretty well. When I say buying pretty well, I don't think too many people would have bought Dan Burn and played him at left back. And I'm still not convinced he is a left back, but it worked well enough to get them into European football. I also look at Kieran Trippier, and I guess it's probably become a little bit fashionable to knock Kieran Trippier after the last few weeks. But I think it was a pivotal signing. I think Eddie Howe probably looked at that squad and he thought, now this squad needs a little bit of leadership. I thought it was excellent. And I remember us, whenever we've played them and they've had Trippier's caused us all manner of problems. He got the leader, he filled a position that he needed to fill, and it gave the club the necessary guidance that they needed. So there's an awful lot to admire about what he does with players. The recruitment, I can't speak too much about. It's really, really difficult to know who's bought who at Newcastle because we really don't know the composition of the club. We know they have high ambitions, but even that's a little bit murky. It really is a little bit murky. I never fully understood. If we accept the narrative that they are the richest club in the world, that the Saudi investment fund is the richest sporting fund that there is, and they can buy whatever they want, I never found that really fitted with them not only buying Newcastle. Bear in mind, you could just, if you really wanted to, they could have gone and waved 10 billion under the Glazers' noses and gone and bought Manchester United. Let's be fair, in the time that they were haggling for it, Chelsea got bought and sold for, well, wasn't bought and sold, you know what happened. Todd Bowley picked up the pieces from whoever. I've no idea where that money went, by the way, and paid sort of 3.5 billion for Chelsea. And my point of the matter is there are bigger clubs and more established clubs. I'm seeing it in my mind as I'm saying it now, and there might be Newcastle fans watching this, and I've just said there are bigger clubs than Newcastle, and I don't think that'll be I don't think that'll be received particularly well. But you know what I mean. There are more established clubs than Newcastle, where they could have been bought, be it Liverpool or wherever else, and if money wasn't the problem, go and buy them. It never really fitted that once that they had got that had the purchase ratified by the Premier League and the Saudis were given permission to buy Newcastle, that they were haggling between 280 million and the 300 million that Mike Ashley wanted. I may have that slightly wrong, but that's roughly what happened. It just didn't sort of make sense, really. So I don't know how much investment there is there. I don't know who's doing the buying and selling of the players. I know they went and hired the guy from Brighton as their director of football. But I think Howe has done a good job and has done a decent job. However, I look at West Ham at the moment, right now, and there's something exciting happening. Really exciting. I think David Moyes takes a long time to do anything, be it buying players, finding a formation, making substitutes. Honestly, the geezer must take half an hour to brush his teeth in the morning. He takes a long, long time. And sometimes he stumbles on things, I think. And I think he's finally stumbled on a way to get Kudus, to get Paquetá, and to get Bowen and Ward-Prowse and Souček and to fit them all into the same team. And he's managing to do it. And he's able to sort of swap tactics with the same personnel in individual games now. Now, whether that's going to work out in the long run, I don't know. You know, look, come back here in a few games' time, and if West Ham start taking a hiding again, I may well have changed my mind. But at the moment, he looks like he's found something. And I do think it took him a little bit of time to find a solution to his problems, David Moyes, because as I've maintained in other videos, I think Kudus was bought as Paquetá's replacement. It was never meant to be happening. I think Paquetá was meant to go, and I think with the money from Paquetá, we probably meant to buy a striker and a left winger. That's what I think was meant to happen. The fact that we were pursuing strikers, Ekitike, or whatever his name is, Balogun, Folarin Balogun. Sorry, no, wrong one. The guy that I can't remember the guy's name now. I went to Ajax from Manchester City. You know the guy. The left winger, the fact that we were in for a left winger and the fact that we were in for a striker, I think that probably indicated that was going to be the case. So I think David Moyes has had to sort of muddle through and find a way to get his team playing, but he's managing to do it. He's managing to, on occasions, find this system where he can get the best out of Paquetá, we get the best out of Jarrod Bowen, he can get the best out of Mohamed Kudus. And when he can get all three of those firing, we're a hell of a team. I mean, we really are. I think we're a threat to anyone. There's still tinkering to be done, and there's still somebody to be brought in January. But I don't think we're far away. I think one player, even if we say we bought one player and got one more on loan, I think it can make a difference to us. I think it could make us better. And if we're able to buy the players at the standard that we have, with the players that came in the summer, who have all done pretty damn well, I think, to varying degrees. You can, probably say Mavropanos has done the least well, and then put the others in order that you want. Mavropanos still looks like a decent player. 17 million. Then of course we bought Alvarez, Kudus, and James Ward-Prowse. We ain't done too badly. If we can buy a couple of players at that sort of level, maybe possibly as a left winger, possibly as a striker, maybe a right back, something like that. Just a couple of players incrementally, it will make us better. I'd be interested to see what David Moyes can do with that. And I actually think we probably have more chance of finishing in European positions again, which has to be what it's all about. And by the way, I'm talking about this season. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the future. I'm talking about this season. I think we would have more chance of finishing in the top 6 or 7 or whatever it is, with David Moyes in charge with 2 more signings that he's actually likely to use, than Eddie Howe coming in with a broom and sort of sweeping all before him and completely and utterly changing things. Don't get me wrong. I think the normal problems remain. I think we do have some issues with David Moyes. I think we've probably got a progression issue that probably needs sorting for the academy, for some progression to the first team. Even if we accept that not all of them are going to be destined for West Ham, there are a hell of a lot in that under-21 team who are going to play professional football. And not everyone plays for West Ham, but some people are a Grady D and Garner, or some people, can go on and they can really do things and do well. So actually, in terms of bringing revenue into the club, it's really important that we bring somebody in at some point who can not only develop them, bring them forwards. And even if we just do what Chelsea do, which is bring players in, put them out on loan, sort of start creating a little bit of a conveyor belt where some of these players can be either get into the West Ham first team and those that don't have a value, rather than someone like Ekwa, who of course didn't, he leaves us. I know we brought him in from Chelsea as a kid, but he leaves our academy, goes to Sunderland, and it's Sunderland who probably are going to reap the benefit of the multi-million pounds deal rather than us. That's a bad example because we got 30% sell-on clause on that player. But you know what I mean. So I think there are bigger things in the future that have to be dealt with. There's no doubt about that. But for this season, right now, and as good as Eddie Howe is, and I do think he's a good manager, and I think sometimes it's funny, it's something that West Ham fans get accused of, is short-term memories. I wouldn't ever accuse, I hear it a lot, West Ham fans, oh, you've quickly forgotten about Prague. I can't think of a single West Ham fan that's forgotten about Prague. Even the people that want Moyes out, they still remember Prague. It's a weird insult to throw at someone because you want David Moyes out. You have forgotten about the Conference League. No, the two, you can remember the Conference League and want David Moyes out. They're not mutually exclusive. And I don't think people have got short memories with Eddie Howe particularly, but I do think there's a lot to admire there. I think he's had a hell of a lot of injuries, and I think there's a lot of mitigation there, and I think there's a lot of football that got played before he's taken this dip in form. And I would also point out that Newcastle are in 7th at the moment. Again, I sound like someone talking to West Ham, don't I? But this has also been their first season in the Champions League and in European football. And despite them competing and right up to now playing in European football, so they didn't get to the knockout rounds, but up to now they played the same amount of games as everybody else. He still managed to juggle European football, 7th place in the league. I know that might change after today. Sorry, as I record this, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, by the way. That's not bad. Bearing in mind they've got an injury crisis as well, and their record ever signing has taken a ban. Tonyali. I think all things considered, it ain't too bad. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that losing at home, they don't like that. They're not going to like that at St James's Park, that's for sure. To Nottingham Forest with goals. I think Chris Wood scored a hat-trick. The guy that Newcastle bought off Burnley to ensure Burnley went down and Newcastle stayed up. That's not a good look. I understand how that looks from the outside. But he still ain't a bad manager. And I'll go further than that. I think he's a good manager. I think anyone that gets Eddie Howe will be doing really, really well. And Newcastle might be wise not to be too hasty, because I think Eddie Howe has shown that he's keen to learn. And I think he'll have learnt an awful lot from what's happened this season. I think he'll be better next season because of it. But going back to what I said, right now, Eddie Howe for West Ham, December, we've got a transfer, whatever, regardless of what you hear, West Ham will have their transfer targets already lined up. Tim Steiten will have done all that stuff. And yes, I know Steiten will be doing the buying, not David Moyes, but Steiten's still identifying players to fit in David Moyes' system. Eddie Howe might have a different set of parameters. Right now, somebody to come in, Eddie Howe, to replace David Moyes, got to be honest, stick with David Moyes. Might change your mind in 2 or 3 weeks. That's sport. That's the fickle nature of sport and the fickle nature of me. End of the season, we'll address that then, because it might be a different matter.